Alrighty, what up, kids? Hope everyone's well. A few of you asked me to record the DBQ lesson because you will not be in class the 3 days we'll be going over it. So I'm going to record a little overview of what we're doing. We are starting our DBQ for the next 3 days today. Today I'm going to be talking about what we're doing on Wednesday, which is going over the context and thesis part of your DBQ, which again is going to be 25% of your grade. We're going to go over the analyzation of the sources, and we're going to go over the steps to writing the DBQ along with writing our context and thesis. Thursday, we will write our body paragraphs, and Friday, we'll write our conclusion and trying to go over that unicorn point and wrap up the DBQ process. So right now, let's dive into today's lesson that you might miss. How to contextualization. Okay, so before I get there, just know that again, you're gonna write your context paragraph in your document-based question, which is again where you get 7 documents. You get a prompt. You have to answer that prompt with the argument, and you have to argue your point throughout this argument of essay. And it's a DBQ. You're gonna be forced to use 6 documents and all that, and we'll go over it. But just the big idea is again, it's a 55-minute time DBQ. It's a quarter of your grade. It's going to be between 4 to 5 paragraphs, and it's based on a 7-point rubric. Now, during your 15-minute prep time, I'm not going to really go over this slide quite in depth, but what you're going to really need to do is first off, identify your skill, your content, and your time period. That's the first thing you're going to need to do as soon as you get your DBQs. Go straight to the prompt and identify what the skill they're asking for you to talk about, what piece of content are they asking you for to look for, and where is the time period. Now, why is that? Well, that's going to tell you how you're going to set up your body paragraphs and your essay. So, for example, if I identify let's read this prompt first. Evaluate the extent to which railroads affected the process of empire building in Afro-Eurasia between 1860 and 1918. The skill is affected, so we know it's our cause and our effect. Now, because we know it's our cause and effect skill, we are going to know which type of essay to write. And I'm going to show you with this handout here. 1 second. Alrighty, kiddos. So the document we're looking at is right here. Let's see if it's popping up on your screen. There it comes. And as you get the skill that you identify in your prompt question, you're going to go back after you understand it. You're going to find which graph goes with your skill. So, for example, this comparison graph right here would go with the compare and contrast skill in the prompt. This continuity and change graph will go with the continuity and change prompts, and then obviously cause and effect, which is the one ours is on, would go into this one. Now, what this graph shows is there's 3 different ways you could set up your cause and effects body paragraph, and there's 2 ways there's 1 way with 4 paragraphs, and there's 2 ways with 5 body paragraphs. So again, our prompt is evaluate the extent. So how much did railroads affect the process of empire building in Afro-Eurasia? Okay, so again, cause and effect. Okay, so again, 3 different ways to write this. First way, number 1, is chronological order. You tell me the first effect, the second effect, and then the third effect. And you could even break that down to 2 body paragraphs and create that a 4 body paragraph as well. Remember, when you guys are figuring out how to set up your DBQ, the reason you're going to want to identify how many body paragraphs you're going to write is because for each body paragraph, you're going to need a line of reasoning in your thesis. So whatever, let's say you give 2 reasons in your thesis to support the claim you make, you are going to need to have a body paragraph about each of those claims within your thesis. Okay, and that's the first way, chronological. The second way is duration. That means we get the short-term effects and then the long-term effects. Okay, and that's basically if you have a really wide range time period in your prompt, you could do the short term, like the initial effects, and then how it affected everything along the line. So, like for example, if the Mongols invaded East Asia, there's short term effects to that, but there's also long term effects as far as the exchange of knowledge, right? Now, the third one is categorical. In categorical, you could use one of your AP world history themes, and you could pick a category and how that category was affected. And again, you don't need to have 3 effects in here. You could have 2 effects if you want. It's completely fine. You could also split this up to where you have 1 causation paragraph and then 2 effect paragraphs. That would get you the unicorn point. Now, for those of you who haven't gone over the DBQ slide yet, go ahead and go through it. You'll see what the unicorn point is. I'll also be going over that again on Friday, and I'll make a video for that as well. Now, the reason I say only put one body paragraph as a cause is because what is it asking you? It's asking you for just the effects. And if it's asking you for just the effects, you need to have at least 2 body paragraphs with the effects. But if you were to maybe add 1 body paragraph before the effects, which was the causes in your body paragraph, that could get you the unicorn point. And again, you'll go back to that in your resources and read through that slideshow to get an understanding of the rubric. I'm going to go over the first part of that slideshow right now. Okay, so again, we mentioned before that this DBQ that you guys are going to be writing, it's a 7-point rubric. Okay, the first 2 points are gotten within your introduction paragraph. And again, all we're going to be working on today in this lesson is just your opening paragraph. Okay, so again, 2 points you can get. The first point is your context point, which I'm going to show you guys a slideshow right now on how to do that. And then your second point is your thesis point. We've already gone over your thesis in class. Go back and refer to the slideshow on how to write a thesis statement. Remember, there's 3 different ways. Each way will get you a point. The third way is that unicorn point, and the first 2 ways are just your normal thesis point. Again, I don't go depth into the unicorn point, but if you want to go into your resources tab, open up How to DBQ and read through it, you totally can. We'll be going over it Friday. So this is a setup of your body paragraph, your first paragraph. You're going to have contextualization in about 3 to 4 sentences, which is going to establish the historical context and the time period of your prompt. And that's why you want to identify the content you're talking about and the time period you're talking about as soon as you get your prompt, because you're going to want to it'll help you set up your context and your thesis. It's a part of the process. So again, your contextualization part is 3 to 4 sentences. You need at least 3 facts or pieces of background information. And what it basically does is set the stage for the argument you're going to be making in your thesis and for your entire essay. Now, it's a 3-part really paragraphs. It's like a 3-part setup in that paragraph. The first part is your 3 to 4 sentences on your context, your background information that sets the tone, sets the mood. The next sentence would be a connection sentence to your thesis. So how does this background information that you're giving connect to your thesis? And you're going to have some cool sentence connector there that I'm going to show you an example of later for that. And then obviously the last part of your opening paragraph is going to be your thesis. Okay. And again, we practice our thesis is 2 to 3 claims, answering the question. Why 2 to 3? Because that's how many body paragraphs you're going to have. How many lines of reasoning are you going to have for your claim, right? All right, so the question you might be asking yourself right now is, so how do I write my context part of my paragraph? Well, we're going to get into that right now. This picture on the screen, you guys see the AP World Periodization chart. This should look familiar. We actually only currently have the foundations filled out, so this is the only part that you know about, but it's also pasted in your notebooks. We're going to get to the early modern, the contemporary in future units. Now, you'll see that the essay or the DBQ that you guys are going to be working on right now is probably have to do with the trans-Saharan trade. If not, it's a different one, no worries. But that's going to take place in our foundations period, the trans-Saharan DBQ that I'm given for this year, 2021. Maybe it's a different year. I don't know. Anyhow, you're going to be looking at all these things that went on in the world in order to basically set the mood, set the stage for your thesis, for the claim that you're going to make. And again, don't forget, the thesis that we're going to be looking on is different for everybody. So whatever prompt you have, that's how you're going to use the background information to support it. Now, when you are writing your context, you're going to want to think, how or why did your thesis happen? What background information do I need to establish to show why my thesis happened? And then you're also going to want to tell me what else is going on in the world at this time. And you want to be specific when you tell me what else is going to go on in the world. You don't want to make like a broad statement. You want to be specific on what's happening and how it relates to your thesis. So when you write your thesis, you're going to go through this context checklist right here. Do I have 3 to 4 sentences? Am I being specific? Am I establishing the time period in my first sentence? That's a big one. You need to establish the time period in your body paragraph, or you can't get either your thesis or your contextualization point on the essay. And then your last sentence, part of your context, again, needs to connect to my thesis. And then my thesis is my actual last sentence within my body paragraph. So what is an example of a thesis? What is an example of a thesis? Well, some people think of a thesis as a bullseye, right? In the middle of that bullseye where you have the arrow going in, that is your thesis statement. That's the claim you make with your line of reasons and however reasons you give, to whether it's 2 or 3. Now, as you get around that thesis, you're going to be getting to different layers of information. Okay. The farther you get, the less relevant the information is to your thesis. So when you start writing your background information, you're going to want to aim for somewhere right outside your bullseye. What other information is going on? Another way that teachers think of this is as a rainbow, where at the beginning of the rainbow, you have your event, your topic. That's your thesis, right? And then as you leave as you go wider into your rainbow, you have more immediate parts that relate to your thesis. And as the wider you go, you have less things. Okay. So if it's talking about societies, okay, you're going to talk about the specific society. Maybe you'll talk about other societies. Maybe you'll talk about societies in other regions. Maybe you'll talk about societies on the other part of the globe. Again, notice that as I was saying that, I was getting farther from the background information of my specific thesis. So what is a thesis, or not a thesis, my context? What is a context statement? Well, this is a context statement. That's right, kiddos. That long beginning of every Star Wars movie where they tell you what is going on in the galactic empire up to that episode. That is the context for that movie. That is an example of giving context to a story. Now, we give context all the time, kiddos, when we talk to each other in the hall. Did you see so and so say that to so and so? They're gonna be like, yeah. Well, why did they say that? And then you're gonna tell them why they said that, or they had that conversation. That's what context is. That's everything you need to know for someone to understand the point you're making, or the story you're telling, or the thesis you're giving. What's another example? What's another example? Well, you guys watch Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Earth, fire, air. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days, a time of peace, when the Avatar kept balance between the water
Yes,
tribes,
just like Star
Kingdom,
Wars,
Fire Nation,
the
and
story
Terra Nova.
of Avatar and Aang,
All
The Last
changed when the
Airbender, is
Fire Nation
established within the beginning of the show. So that's another example. That's another show. How about another one? What's another one that has context statement? Well, this is a little bit older for most of you guys. This is more my age and older, but Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. How did the Fresh Prince get to Bel-Air? That's what the whole beginning is about. That is the context.
Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel-Air.
Here he goes. He's going to give us the context of him getting to Bel-Air.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground is where I spend most of my days. Chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool and all, shooting some b-ball outside of the school. When a couple of guys who were up to no good started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in one little fight and my mom got scared and said, "You're moving with your auntie and uncle in Bel-Air." I begged and pleaded with her day after day, but she packed my suitcase and sent me on my way. She gave me a kiss, said my Walkman on.
Alrighty, kiddos. I think you're getting the hint here on the context statement that leads up to your thesis in your opening paragraph. Let's go back to the slide. Now, here's a real example that we could really look at and think about the context. So initially, when we look at this picture, right, we see people standing in lines with their mask. We see them. We don't know why they have a mask on. Let's say somebody 100 years from now was looking at this picture, right? They wouldn't know exactly what's going on, but they see there's color in the photo. There's people standing in line. They have grocery bags. They're standing 6 feet apart. they're in the city. They would need to know the context of this picture in order to know what was going on. All they could see is what they see, right? We know the context because we're living through COVID. But the context is, hey, these people are standing in line to get groceries. They have to stand in line because people need to stand 6 feet apart because the COVID variant is out there and people are wearing masks to stop themselves from getting sick. That's 3 pieces of background information that would establish the context to this picture. Now let's take a look at an example in a prompt of a real context statement. Now this context statement is actually from one of my students last year, Bren. But the prompt that she was used or what she was given was to evaluate the extent to which the Mongols impacted Afro-Eurasian societies during 1200 to 1450 CE time period. Okay, so how much did the Mongols impact Afro-Eurasian societies from 1200 to 1450? Okay, so in our uh, periodization chart, that would be the foundations era as well. So Bren's going to look at this stuff and think about how the Mongols affected integration of Afro-Eurasia, how they affected exchange networks, how they affected cultural traditions, governing techniques, right? You're going to think about that stuff with the Mongols. Why the Mongols? Well, that's what her prompt is on. That is the content that you had to identify as soon as you get your DBQ. So that's what she's going to be thinking about to write this context statement. So she says the Mongols were a pastoral society that lived in East Asia around 1200 to 1450. And kids, again, I know you don't know this yet. This is next unit. Just follow along. The climate there was harsh and it shaped their culture in that their clans were divided. Genghis Khan united the Mongols and helped them to widely expand their empire. They were skilled horsemen and were experts with the bow and arrow, which gave them great advantage in battle and allowed them to conquer areas across Afro-Eurasia. The Mongols significantly impacted Afro-Asian society by diffusing different cultures through conquest and increasing the exchange of goods. So what did we see here? Let's go through our context checklist. In these 3 to 4 sentences with at least 3 facts, right? New facts, pieces of background information. It needs to be specific on that background information. It needs to establish the time period, and it needs to give a sentence connector to my thesis. So let's take a look at what Bren wrote here. She said, the Mongols were a pastoral society that lived where? In East Asia. Is that in Afro-Eurasia? Yup. Around 1200 to 1450. She establishes the region and the time period in her opening sentence. And that's something that we should all do in our DBQ. Okay. So they were a pastoral society. That's one background information. Okay. What else? The climate there was harsh and it shaped their culture. That's a second piece of background information in that their clans were divided. So their clans were divided. They were decentralized. They weren't centralized, right? That's a second piece, or that's a third piece, really, of information. Genghis Khan united the Mongols and helped them to widely expand their empire. Again, Genghis Khan, a fourth piece of information. She's going above and beyond. And now here comes her sentence connector right here. This is the underlined part of the assignment. They were skilled horsemen and were experts with the bow and arrow, which gave them great advantage in battle and allowed them to conquer areas across Eurasia. Oh, so it's talking about them conquering and impacting their societies. That's how it relates. Awesome. Here comes the thesis. The Mongols significantly impacted Afro-Eurasian society by 1, diffusing different cultures through conquest, and 2, increasing the exchange of goods. So I know because she gave me 2 different reasons, she's going to have 2 different body paragraphs. Great job, Bren. And again, now that we've learned how to write our context statement and we've seen an example, remember, your thesis makes a claim, a defensible claim with a verb, right? A verb like pit bulls are the most aggressive dogs, right? And it establishes a line of reasoning after with some sort of connector, whether it's just the word because, the use of some academic language like in regards to, or it introduces a counterpoint first and then your main claim, which again is the unicorn way. You're not required to write this way. This is just for overachievers who really, really want to drive home their point and maybe get a little bit extra points on the DBQ. Put it this way, guys. Less than 1% of high school kids get the unicorn point. on this test. So again, I don't harp on it much because if you just overwork yourself over something that isn't a big point, you're going to stress yourself out. So again, I don't really focus on that way. But if you want to, please go ahead. One thing I didn't go over that I will go over more in the body paragraphs tomorrow video is these keywords that I attached to the bottom of the structuring your essay handout I gave you, and it just gives you keywords to tell you which skill you're looking to identify in your prompt, in order to set up the body paragraph and the thesis. So, for example, in ours in Africa, we're using effects, right? We saw that word affected, so we know that's going to be causation skill. Okay. And again, some keywords you can use multiple skills for. There isn't any one word. Impact could be continuity and change, and it could be causation. It'll be up to you how you want to do it. All right. So now that we understand how to write a context statement, how to write a thesis statement, um, how it leads into our body paragraphs, how we have to establish a line of reasoning in our thesis, how we have to have a connection from our context to our thesis statement. Let's look at the steps to writing the DBQ. Now, I mentioned the first step really, really briefly earlier when I said the first thing you got to do is what? Read the prompt, right? And that's what you're going to do. That should take less than 1 minute. And in that, when you read that prompt, you're going to identify again the skill, the content, and the time period. And that is, again, at the beginning of this slideshow. If it lets me work, it doesn't work. Here we go. That's that slide right there. Slide 3, if you want to look at how I looked at that prompt. Now, your prompt's a little bit different. We will identify it in class. If not, do it at home and then ask me if you're wrong. Or do it at home if you're not in class, and then you just email me and ask me how you did if you'd like. But we'll probably do it together in a little bit. So just hold tight. So after you establish the skill, the content, and the time period, you're going to bullet point everything you know about the content and time period, because that's going to help you establish your background information. You're going to think about your periodization chart. Now, you're not going to be able to have this on you for the test, but if you memorize it, you have all your background information to think about. After you do that, you're going to go through and annotate and group the 7 documents. Okay. You're going to read each of the 7 documents. Remember, you need to use at least 6 of them in your DBQ to get full points. And again, we'll talk about that more tomorrow on Thursday. You're going to annotate and group the documents with like arguments. Okay. So if you made an argument that, hey, pit bulls are aggressive dogs, instead of saying pit bulls are not aggressive dogs, you're going to be looking for the arguments that you could use to support your claim that pit bulls are aggressive dogs, right? Also, as you're reading each source, you're going to note the easy hat perspective you could use, which again is your sourcing statement. That's also in your body paragraphs, and we'll go over that again tomorrow. But you're going to be identifying that as you analyze your documents. What thing looks suspect? What lacks reliability in each of the sources according to our historical context, our audience, our purpose, or our point of view? Again, you're just doing the easiest one. You're not identifying all 4, because within your bodies, you're going to be required to use 3 to get your sourcing point. And again, we'll go over that more tomorrow. You're also going to tell me the main idea or claim of each of the documents as you're reading through them. You might want to, note down the main idea in the margins. You're going to get a chance to do that as you work on the actual DBQ, which is on this handout right here, which we're going to do here soon together in class. If you're not, you're doing it on your own. Okay. After you do the grouping, after you annotate and group the arguments that you see in your document, you're going to write your context, your thesis, and your outside evidence in your in your essay. Okay, why context, thesis, and outside evidence? Now, the outside evidence is actually in your body paragraph, so you're going to note that down in the margins before you write it. But that's just an easy 3 points. You get 1 point for your context, 1 point for your thesis, and 1 point for the outside evidence that you plug at the end of your body paragraphs in your essay. So if you just get those written down in the margin right away, you have 3 easy points, especially when the national average is 2.5, and you could just pick up 3 really easy, just like that. So again, that's when you're going to write your context and your thesis statement now. So let's dive deep into some of the Africa DBQ documents and take a look at the prompt and try to identify the things we need to identify. So first thing we're supposed to do is, again, identify the skill, content, and time period in the prompt. So the prompt is evaluate the extent in which the diffusion of Islam impacted the sub-Saharan region around 1450. Now, diffusion is that big word that we've been using. Again, if we Google diffusion, let's Google it. Literally means the spread of something, okay? The spreading of something more widely, the action of spreading culture, society, belief systems, right? So, how much did the spread of Islam impact the sub-Saharan region? Now, we have a specific region, and circa means before, so before 1450. So, before 1450, that would be our time period, and then spread of Islam in the sub-Saharan region, that would be our content. Got to do that a different color. We could do that pink, and then evaluate the extent to which impacted. Okay, so impacted would be our skill. Now, the word impacted, you could set up your essay multiple ways with that, but we're going to go back and look at our documents, analyze them, annotate them. After we are done analyzing and annotating them, we're going to go back to our structuring handout and see with the arguments that we can make, what is the best way to set it up. Should we set it up as continuity and change? Should we set it up as cause and effects? Because again, it used that word impact within the prompt. So we're going to check it out. I could tell you this, that as soon as I get the word impacted, all I'm going to be thinking about when I read my documents is impact 1, impact 2, and impact 3. If I could get 2 to 3 specific impacts, I'm golden. Now, strategically, I'm only going to I want to look for 3, but I only want to use 2, because if I use 3 in my line of reasoning in my thesis, I'm going to have to write 3 body paragraphs. So I'm going to look at the different impacts I find and see, out of all these impacts that I find in these documents, how can I paraphrase a big idea, or how can I categorize all these impacts into basically 2 impacts, to where I have enough information to talk about for each one of those. All right, let's only look at a couple of documents together. And again, when we're reading these documents, we're going to be thinking about, first off, what argument does it make? What's the main idea? What lacks reliability of it? And then how can I categorize this document to suit a specific argument? So what impacts does it have? Before I do this, you guys on your own should have done, after you read the prompt, you should list right here in the margin everything you know about, again, the region, the era, in order for you to establish your context. Okay. So go ahead, let's read the document. So document number 1, the following description of the kingdom of Ghana was written by al-Bakari, a member of the prominent Spanish Arab family who lived during the 11th century. A Muslim geographer, he lived most of his life in Cordova and Almeria. He never left Islamic Spain. He wrote about the Sahara after gathering information from merchants and other visitors. In Roads and Kingdoms, 1057, he wrote the following excerpt. So again, this is almost like your historical context that it gives you here. You could use your historical context in the background information here to write a HAP statement if you were to use this document in your essay. Let's see what he has to say. The city of Ghana consists of 2 towns situated on a plain. One of these towns, which is inhabited by Muslims, is large and possesses 12 mosques in which they assemble for the Friday prayer. There are salaried imams and muezzins, as well as jurists and scholars. In the environs are wells with sweet water from which they drink and with which they grow vegetables. The king's town is 6 miles distant from this one. Between these 2 towns are continuous habitations. In the king's town, and not far from his court of justice, is a mosque where the Muslims who arrive at his court pray. Around the king's town are domed buildings and groves and thickets where the sorcerers of these people, men in charge of the religious cult, live. In them too are their idols and the tombs of their kings. These words are guarded, and none may enter in them and know what is there. The king's interpreters, the officials in charge of this treasury, and the majority of his ministries are Muslim. Among the people who follow the king's religion, only he and his peers, or him and his hire, are apparent, who is the son of his sister, may wear these sewn clothes. All other people wear robes of cotton, silk, or brocade according to their means. All right, so in this source, we have a Islamic geographer, okay, Muslim geographer from Spain, traveling to Ghana and then explaining what happened there. or basically his experience there. He wrote about the Sahara after gathering information from merchants. Okay, that might lack reliability too, because he's getting his information from who? Just from merchants. So that's something you could put in your hat right there. You could talk about his point of view of being a Muslim geographer and his first time experiencing Ganga. Those are all pieces of HAP that you could maybe cite to think about that you might want to jot down in the margin to affect reliability of the source. Now, again, he's talking about Ghana. This is what he sees. When he's there in Ghana, he notices that all the ministers, the king's interpreters, the officials of this treasury, they're all Muslim. Okay, does that show an impact of Islam in the sub-Saharan region? Yeah, because Ghana is where? In the sub-Saharan region. So that is something I would jot down in the margin right here. I would say Islamic influence in the courts uh, around the king, the spread of religion because it talks about mosque. Okay, that's another main idea right there. So the diffusion of Islam's religion, the diffusion of their belief systems in the courts. It also describes the town of having mosques in it, right? So that changes the geography of the town. Obviously, the state building of it, that's impacted. Those are all things you could write in the margins right here. So that's one impact, right? That's one impact you could talk about. And so we're going to be looking for that theme in the rest of the documents, the theme of the spread of Islam's religion, the impact of the mosque, the spread of the bureaucracy and belief systems within the court system with near the kings, the new religion of the kings, right, from what they were before. Those are all themes I'm going to be looking at in all of these documents now, because those themes were established in document 1, and those out of those themes I could pick 2 that are impacts for my thesis. Right, so let's look at source 2. Okay, again, it says description of Timbuktu by Leo Africanus, a traveler and writer born in Granada, Al-Andalus, in the 16th century. Now, Granada is a city in southern Spain, so we know that this is a description of Timbuktu, which a city in Mali, right? Mali is the empire that rose after Ghana. So this is a short-term impact, maybe, because you see the city of Ghana, and now we're looking at a longer-term impact. This is years later. This is almost 500 years later. Yeah, so 1057 again to the 1500s, the 16th century. So this is a long-term impact that we're probably going to be looking at here based on the source. Also from this source, this is a description of Timbuktu, so a main trading hub basically within Mali, and it was a traveler and writer who wrote this. So you could maybe figure out some bias in that or check reliability in that. Let's see what they said. You could also say they were born in Spain and they weren't from Timbuktu, so that might affect their opinion of it. That's another piece of reliability for your sourcing statement you could jot down in the margins. It says, here are many doctors, judges, priests, and other learned men that are well maintained at the king's cost. Various manuscripts and written books are brought here and sold for money, and then other merchandise. So this right here, this information, these manuscripts, these written books that help teach the priests, the judges, the doctors of these sub-Saharan African societies are brought by Muslim traders. Okay, Muslim traders is another way through trade these Muslim merchants were able to diffuse Islam and impact, sub-Saharan Africa through giving them manuscripts, books that taught them how to be priests, judges. Okay, that's the main idea of document 2. Even though it's that short, that's all the information we can get from just those couple of sentences that you should be able to identify in the margin. Okay, so that's another theme that we could talk about. Impact is like, hey, impact through merchants, right? Now you're gonna read the rest of these on your own. The hardest one that you're gonna come across again is document 6. It's the only picture one. Usually you get one picture in each of your DBQ tests, and it's of a mosque in northern Mali. Okay, it was constructed by under the order of Emperor Mansa Musa. You should know all about Mansa Musa. So this background should help you evaluate the happiness. Should help you evaluate an argument you could use with this. Like we already actually identified this argument in the first document too. This is a mosque, right? So the spread of Islam created new geographic locations and mosque all over sub-Saharan Africa, which diffused Islam even further, right? And it legitimized the rule of the new Islamic kings like Mansa Musa. Okay, so again, you could still derive the same exact stuff out of a picture, but you only really need to use 6 documents. So if you're not strong with a picture one, just skip it. Use the other 6. Use the 6 easiest ones. Now, if you don't remember what we talked about in Africa, I believe it was 1.3. I posted in the DBQ for Africa a lecture video on it. Actually, I have not yet. I'm going to post it right now. And in that lecture video, it's from Gonzalez. He made it last year. He'll review everything we went over in Africa. If I were you, I'd go back to your notes and read them as well. All right, so I have now added that video in there. It's 14 minutes that reviews what went on in sub-Saharan Africa and what we've already gone over. But again, you could also look in your notes and whatever we did that day in class. Go ahead and look in your Google Classroom through that. So today, you're going to write your context statement and your thesis. Tomorrow, that needs to be done so we can go over the body paragraphs.